Welcome, Brian. Oh, Brianna, sorry, Brianna. Okay, so people are coming in. Panelists, I was going to say anyway, we're recording all of these. And so for the Academic and Career Advising website, so if you would be kind enough, well, we have participants now anyway, but know that others will be able to access it after the fact via the video that we'll make of this. And I'm actually going to start recording now. All right, we'll give it a couple more minutes for others to arrive. Brianna, if you could, we have a couple questions in the chat box for you. If you could let us know. Hey, thanks, Mark. One more minute. We'll get started at 6:05. This is going to end promptly at 7:15 at the latest. So Brianna, just checking in on where you're logging in from, your class year and your major.
Will we be able to see the students, Steve, or can we just see the panel?
You will not. Yeah.
So they can see me, but I can't see them?
For a few security reasons, we changed some of the settings. Thanks, Brianna. Yeah, the mayor and Melinda were doing a Zoom meeting giving updates from the city and the college last Thursday, and it got Zoom bombed. And it was bad. So we changed some of our settings.
Sounds like that's a good idea.
Thank you. All right, Mark, could you switch over the screen, please, to the list of panelists? I think it'd be slide 2, and while I welcome people. So welcome to this week's Career Speaker Series event, Careers in Journalism. We have an amazing panel coming your way. In just a few minutes, just a couple of things about the series itself. We'll continue to meet every Tuesday night from 6 to 7:15. Each week is a unique Zoom link. So go to the Career Speaker Series page. Hopefully your professors are forwarding it on to you as well from an email that I send to them. But just know that this link for tonight will not work for you for next week or future events. We'll run all the way through April 21st. There are different themes for each week. I can announce that what we had planned for next Tuesday night cannot happen. We plan to have several staff members from the Crotchet Mountain School over just west of us, just east of us, sorry, on as a panel, talk about, they hire a bunch of different majors, students from a bunch of different majors, but due to their closed community of children through young adults, and they're quite overwhelmed, obviously, with the tasks at hand. So they passed on their regrets today, but quickly working with Karen Cangelosi in our biology department, and she's pulling together a panel of young alums who are doing amazing things in the biomedical and research realm. So that'll be next week's, and I'll get that description changed on the website tomorrow morning. So without further ado, oh, actually, Misty, would you mind going over a couple of the housekeeping things?
Absolutely, Steve. Hey guys, so I know that you're more than familiar with Zoom, but just to be sure, let's cover a couple of things. So you're actually in a webinar, which is a little bit different than the meeting platform that you may be used to. So we're going to use one of the tools that you'll be familiar with from the meeting platform. So if you look at the bottom in your toolbox, you'll see the little chat box. So I can see some of you guys are already using that. So you should be all set. So as you put in your questions, somebody on our team will read those out loud, and we'll make sure that the panelists are able to answer those. And in my experience, if you have a question, somebody else is probably already thinking about that question, so don't hesitate, shoot out your questions, and have a good night.
Thanks, Misty. So thanks up front to my colleagues and friends, Mark Gempler and okay, could be Jamie. Misty Kennedy and Mark Gempler helping out on the support side. So I appreciate that. This is all new to me, the whole Zoom thing. Real quickly, this is an event that my good friend and colleague Daniel Henderson had in the works before he had a ski accident back in mid-December. I'm grateful that several of, or all of the panelists that he had lined up were able to still join us tonight. So thank you to Terry, Jamie, and Michael. And because we're now remote doing this virtually, I was able to add a couple of other people to the panel. So we're very fortunate to have 5 distinguished journalists from a wide variety of industries or backgrounds within the industry to talk with you tonight about their careers and some tips for you in what is obviously a quickly evolving industry. So without further ado, Mark, could you put us on to video now? And I'll ask the panelists to introduce themselves. Thank you. Emma, would you kick us off and tell us a little bit? We'll get into your day-to-day activities and your role, but if you could let us know your name, your title, where you are working, and what you do there at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Emma Hamilton. I am a 2018 KSC grad. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in journalism with a focus in news media. I'm currently a TV reporter in Savannah, Georgia at an ABC affiliate. I've been here for just over 6 months now. Right after graduation, I moved out to Bozeman, Montana, where I was a reporter, general assignment reporter out there. A couple weeks into the job, I became the weekend anchor and producer. So things kind of moved quickly. So I was out there for just over a year and a half before being offered the job here in Savannah. Originally being from New Hampshire, it's kind of ideal being back on the East Coast and not being cold. So yeah, no, I do TV, and right now I work the morning, so I work from 4 a.m. to noon. So this is pushing bedtime, Steve, but that's okay. I work Monday through Friday. I cover all kinds of different things. I'm general assignment reporter.
Thank you. And for everyone to know, we'll at the end, you'll get website addresses for each of the panelists and email for 4 of the 5 who have opportunities for internships and positions with them in the future. So look for that at the end. Michael, how about you? Introduce yourself, please.
Hey, I'm Michael Brindley, 2003 Keene State College graduate. I grew up in Nashua and ended up going to Keene State, got my bachelor's in journalism, and pursued a career in journalism and worked in print newspapers for a while, and worked with Terry at the Telegraph for 8 great years. We had a lot of fun there and did a lot of great work, and left the paper in 2012 to transition to radio, which was not something that I particularly had planned, but it was an opportunity that presented itself, and I've been at New Hampshire Public Radio now for almost 8 years now. So it's been great there. Right now I'm working as the station's program director, which essentially, to put it, basically listener advocate, listener kind of in chief of the station to monitor the station's sound and work on our program schedule, our audience numbers, and building audience. I also work as the executive producer for The Exchange, which is our daily talk show in the morning. And obviously right now that's been a primary focus in terms of responding to this whole situation. So we are really trying to give people a chance to engage with us and ask questions and get the information they need to make good decisions. So yeah, so that's my job kind of in a nutshell.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for being with us. Let's stick with the alumni theme. Abe, introduce yourself.
Thanks, Steve. My name's Abe Oshiak. I am a 2006 Keene State College grad, also with a degree in journalism. I grew up really wanting to be a newspaper writer, and then I graduated right as newspapers were kind of fading out into existence. And I had worked as a work-study student in the sports information office at Keene State. So I kind of got into that field of college athletics and promotion, and have lived all over the country, moved back to New England in 2010, and came back to Keene State in 2014. I got promoted to assistant athletic director in 2016, and now I am also the lead NCAA compliance officer for the college.
Thank you, Abe. Excellent. Terry, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm Terry Williams. I'm the president and COO at the Keene Sentinel. I've been in newspapers since 1979 when I started as an intern at Foster's Daily Democrat. And so I worked in various reporting and editing jobs. At the Telegraph, where I worked with Michael, I was a regional editor and eventually managing editor, then eventually publisher. And I was there for almost 25 years. The newspaper was sold in 2013, and I was fortunate to land at the Keene Sentinel. And my duties now are mostly on the revenue development and business operations side. I'm in charge of a number of different niche publications. The digital side of the operation rolls up under me, and a variety of other things. So I'm kind of a relic. I've been in print forever, and certainly have seen a lot of transition. And this most recent challenge with the virus has created a number of issues for small dailies like us. Our advertising revenue, which is one of a couple channels that we depend on to keep our newsroom afloat, has pretty much dried up. So we're trying to be very creative and very nimble at a time of great stress. So we're anxious for this to be behind us, and but at the same time, we have a huge responsibility to cover the coronavirus for the Keene and the Monadnock region, and we've been working extremely hard at that.
Yes, you have. Thank you, Terry. And on my walk today, Terry, I walked by your wall dog, which reminded me of the age of the Keene Sentinel. Could you remind us, our students, of a little bit of the history of the Keene Sentinel?
Sure. The Keene Sentinel started in 1799, which was the year I was born. So it's been publishing uninterrupted since that time. It's been held by just a few different families. It's currently owned by a gentleman named Tom Ewing, and he is the second of the Ewing clan to have owned it. But it's a very historic paper. It's weathered a lot of different storms, and I'm sure it's going to get through this one.
Absolutely. We certainly hope so. All right, Jamie, you back with us?
I'm here.
Welcome. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Jamie Trowbridge, and if Terry is a relic, I don't know what that makes me. I am the CEO of Yankee Publishing in Dublin. We're a magazine publisher, technically. We publish Yankee Magazine about New England, the Old Farmer's Almanac, and some magazines about New Hampshire Magazine, the New Hampshire Business Review. and recently acquired a magazine called Family Tree about genealogy. But as I hasten to point out, any small media company now is not limited to one medium. So we have a really robust digital business for all our brands, and a television show now on public television for Yankee called Weekends with Yankee, which we produce with WGBH in Boston.
Oh, fantastic. I did not know that. Thank you. Well, thank you all for being here and sharing some insights and some of your experiences with our students. So you introduced yourselves with your job titles, but take us behind the job title. What does it look like in a day-to-day basis? What is it that you're doing? And then we'll dig, because of the focus of the Career Speaker Series, we'll dig into that a little bit more in terms of what you'd recommend for our students to focus on in their studies, other outside experiences that they might get in their time at Keene State College to prepare for journalism, not only today, but into the future. But let's start by pulling back from that job title that you just shared and talk about a little bit about what that looks like in the day-to-day in your role. Abe, you want to start us off with that one?
Yeah, sure. I guess one of the things I really like about my job is that no day is ever the same. And that probably sounds a little trite, but in college athletics, it really is true. You know, I have 2 employees that I supervise, so I try to meet with them at least once a week. In any given week, we could have 3 to 5 games that we're preparing for on a Saturday. We might have, you know, a volleyball match, a field hockey game, and a soccer game all going on at the same time. So I'm needed in different places. And for those who aren't aware, Keene State plays all its outdoor games about 2 miles from the main campus, and all its indoor sports right on campus in Spalding Gym. So, you know, driving from place to place, I might meet with a kid to discuss their eligibility concerns as part of my responsibilities as the compliance officer. So, you know, it really is a kind of a big mishmash of everything to help the department keeping running smoothly.
So as a former Keene State athlete myself, and a fan of the Keene Owls, and watching you on all the social media feeds, how do you produce the stories and the scoreline for a game so quickly?
I mean, I think anyone who's in charge of other people will tell you that you're only as good as the staff you have. And I've been blessed really the last year and a half with a couple of guys who are really kind of young and enthusiastic, and we don't pay them very much, but we put a roof over their heads, and they really want to get into this field. And so, you know, we kind of split up the sports based on what we have going on, what season we're in. And we just try to get as much out there as we can. We also have a really strong relationship, as Emma can probably attest to, with the journalism department. I actually teach a class on sports broadcasting as well. Probably should have mentioned that earlier. And that helps produce some of the information about the department in other ways. We have a sports-themed TV show. We broadcast all our events. So you're only, like I said, as good as the people you have working with you and for you. So
Thanks, Abe. So let's bring Emma back on, because I think one of the neat things of this panel, and I did not know this until I asked the panelists to introduce themselves to one another. We have 2 sets of mentor-mentee, if you will. And Emma, tell us a little bit about your internship, maybe, and then what do you do in your role?
Yeah, so when I was at Keene State, I did something that I never thought I would do, and I interned with the athletics department. When Inside Out Athletics first launched, I kind of was a part of that growing process of that, kind of what Abe was just saying. It was a weekly broadcast, and basically what I did, because I do not trust myself to do sideline reporting, I did more of the feature stuff. And so and that really relied a lot on Abe and his connections to the athletes within the department, because he would find these awesome stories and then be like, all right, go do it. And that's what I did. And a lot of my experience doing that, even though it wasn't necessarily general assignment reporting, it prepared me as far as conducting interviews and shooting video and putting a story together. And even though it was based around sports and something that I wasn't interested in doing afterwards, it really helped me build, it was a building block for me as I was getting ready to go into the industry. So no, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of time spent together, and but it was a good collaboration between the athletics department and the journalism department. And it seems, from what I still see, to really be going strong. And that's exciting to just see the students that were behind me that might have been freshmen or sophomores, like they're moving up and they're about to go do what I did. And so as a more recent alum, that's really cool to see. But as far as my day-to-day goes, I get in at, like I said, 4 o'clock in the morning. I work the morning show. So I get in at 4, and I'm assigned what I'm going to do that day. And so essentially what we look at with the morning show is new, next, now. So whatever's going to affect people within the next 24 hours that they need to know about as they start their day. So I get an assignment usually the night before from my assignment manager. So if I catch the email before I go to bed, I already know what I'm going to do. And I go in and I write my script, and then I get in the station car, load up all the gear and everything, and I go and I meet my photographer. And so I'm with a photographer all morning long. A big thing that our station is huge on is safety, which I'm really glad about. Obviously, I'm in the dark in the morning, and so I'm with someone in the morning that's running the camera. And so we do 5 live shots a morning. So I essentially do the same thing 5 times because it's considered a different show every half hour. So we do that, and then after that I'm on my own. So I have all my own gear and everything, and then whatever story I'm working on, because once you're done the morning show at 7 o'clock, you still have a lot of time before your day is over. So I take time to research stories that are happening in our area, what people care about, and I kind of do my research, do my digging, and then I'll go and conduct my own interviews and shoot all my own videos. So I get a little bit of the photographer reporter experience, but I also am still doing a lot on my own, which is kind of the way the industry is going, quite honestly. But kind of same thing as Abe. Every day is different, and that's the best thing about news. And that's kind of a big reason why I got into the industry was I don't think I could sit at a desk and do the same thing every day.
Yeah. Thanks, Emma. And so I learned a lot there. You do, with doing the camera work as well after your morning show. So we'll dig into a little bit about your experience at Keene State and what helped you prepare you for the diversity of what you're doing each day. Thank you. Let's go with the next mentor pair. Terry, tell us a bit about what your day looks like, typical day, if there is such a thing.
Well, not now, but prior to all of this, a good portion of my time is spent on business development, which means looking for new products to start, to find new revenue streams for us. Advertising for newspapers has kind of dwindled over the past several years, and it's forced operations like ours to find other ways to bring in money. So we've launched a number of magazines. We do a number of events over the course of the year, which have had have gained a lot of traction locally. Probably our biggest event that we do is an event called Radically Rural, which is an event that pulls people in from all over the country. We had more than 600 people attend it last year. We do it in partnership with the Hannah Grimes Center for Entrepreneurship. So a good amount of my time is trying to figure out how to leverage the Sentinel's brand and do other things with it, and which has been exciting. We've had some success with some of this stuff. Some of it is okay, and some of it it doesn't make it. So you have to know when to kind of pull the plug on certain things. But the exciting part of what I end up doing is trying to find new ways of driving revenue and building audience. And it kind of dovetails into what Jamie was saying, is that there isn't any traditional media company that is not untraditional in other ways, doing a variety of things that they never would have anticipated maybe 15, 20 years ago. A lot of digital stuff. I'm lucky to be doing a lot of that kind of work and finding other ways to kind of support our news operation.
Thank you, Terry. So I'm curious, in the move from the Telegraph to the Sentinel, if I heard your story correctly, that was a one to the other. Were you doing similar work there, or is your work now at the Sentinel pretty drastically different? And what prepared you to make that move into more of the business end of things?
Well, as publisher, yeah, I was doing a lot of the same stuff. What I noticed is pretty dramatic for Keene is just how close the community is to its newspaper. In Nashua, I thought we had a good relationship with readers, a pretty strong relationship in many ways. Keene is a little bit unique in the sense that it seems to me that it has a very, very strong following. It hasn't seen the slide in circulation that other newspapers have seen. There's a lot of engagement locally. So if anything, Keene's allowed me to get even closer to the community than I was in Nashua. But a lot of the things that we were doing in Nashua is able to kind of bring with me. And so it's, I think that's the biggest observation is just how much tighter the Sentinel is to its community.
Yeah, thank you. Michael, as a follow-up to your former mentor, take us behind the scenes of your job title?
Sure. So it's kind of broken into two parts. As program director, really my job is to kind of bring everything we're doing into the air on our station and make sure that we sound good and that we're listener focused. And so a lot of my time is spent making decisions about special coverage or what we're going to air. So for example, if there's a press conference with the governor about what's going on, coordinating to make sure we carry that live and making decisions about what we air and when. So that's a big part of my job. A lot of it is really built on making sure people listen and listen longer and come back and listen again. So building in forward promotion, building in making sure that we're keeping people going from every quarter hour to quarter hour. And so actually going back and doing air checks with the hosts about, how they're sounding, but also best practices as far as, getting people to the next quarter hour, what's coming up next in morning edition. So that's a big part of my job is to quality control, making sure that we're implementing all the right things in terms of getting people to listen longer and promote what we're doing and work with the newsroom to make sure we're promoting a series coming up or promoting the work they're doing, working with marketing and development to get the message out about what NHPR is doing. So I'm kind of the go-between for all of that to make sure that what we're presenting on the air is kind of NHPR in total. So that's really the program director role. Another part of my job that's taking up a lot of time right now just because of the news is overseeing the Exchange, which is our Monday through Friday 9 a.m. talk show hosted by Laura Kanoy, and it's a fantastic program, and we're really trying to be as responsive as we can right now to the coronavirus situation. We've actually done, this is the third day. Today we did 2 hours just because there's just so much to talk about. I mean, we go through and talk about, we have 5 hours every week, 9 to 10 a.m. And, we have like 50 different ideas we could talk about. And so we're actually experimenting with adding more time to the show. And today, for example, we had the first hour was focused on small businesses, the impact they're seeing. We got a ton of calls from people across the state who wanted to share their stories and connect on how they're trying to get through this. And then the second hour was with the Deputy Commissioner of the State Employment Office and just answering listener questions about, do I qualify for unemployment if this or that? And just, it was just 2 hours of what I thought was really good listener service. So that's another part of my job that is really trying to plan ahead for the Exchange and, improve the show, work with the show, engage with listeners. So those are really the two big parts of my job.
Thanks, Michael. And Jamie, how about you? What does a day look like for you?
Well, as the CEO of the business, I spend a lot of my time just on operations and managing and working with different people. It's a very varied business, as Emma said, sort of not the same thing every day. One of the misconceptions about media is I think that, the sort of public facing part of what you do is what people know. So when you say you work at Yankee Publishing, everyone says, are you an editor? Or they might say, I work at a television station. Are you the anchor? But there's so much else that happens at these businesses. And I'm just going to refer to some notes so I don't forget anything here. We do have editors and writers. We have people who manage events. We have people who do advertising, sales, and marketing. We do audience development, which is selling copies of magazines or building audiences on the web. We have people who sell products, e-commerce. We have a new online learning operation, all kinds of web and digital operations, production design. Those are all things you can do at these media companies. And when you're running one, you have to coordinate all that activity.
Thank you. And that's, Jamie, that's a great point. That actually has come out in every single Career Speaker Series event so far this semester, from banking to other more general industries and careers, is the issue of like banking, for example. We might interface with a teller. Actually, many of us don't even do that anymore. But that behind that teller are 20 times as many people. Managing the whole process of running a bank. So that's been an interesting, piece of each of the Career Speaker Series events so far this year, is that every industry is looking for people with a broad, with different backgrounds and a broad set of skill sets. So thank you. Let's given the focus of the event being tonight's event being for students. What skills and experiences from your college days do you still find helpful and that you're tapping into today? Jamie, I just realized we had you fifth a couple times. You want to start with that one? Jamie?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I'm having
skills and experiences from your college days, and are there any that you still find yourself drawing upon today?
Yes. So one of the things that I sort of liked about our industry is that journalism is this career that I think is, there's no one path to where you go, that you might start off in production and work your way up to, suddenly switch over to advertising. And then, it's very common, I think, for journalists like Terry to start off as reporters and editors and then move into the business side. So I really like to hire people who have, a broad range of skills, not necessarily a broad range of experience. They can get that on the job, but my own background is a liberal arts background. I didn't have a journalism degree, and I think it probably would have been good if I'd had some of that experience, but I think some of my other experience in studying English and studying computing has really helped me along the way. And I would say that if you were pursuing this career, and you didn't have a journalism degree, I wouldn't say that necessarily excludes you.
Great to hear. Thank you, Jamie. Terry, how about for you?
Well, I think the skills that I lean back on more than anything is my writing skills. And I think that is something that everybody can benefit from. Certainly everybody on this panel is obviously a good writer, or none of us would be in the positions we're in. But that's an area that just serves you so well in so many ways, whether it's if you're writing a story, obviously, but corresponding with people, if you have to do reports, or if you have to do proposals and all that type of thing, being a really strong writer, it just has, I think, served me well over the years, even to the point of writing letters. I mean, which is kind of a lost art these days, but something I still practice and people appreciate. So and I was fortunate at UNH to have somebody that recognized that I had a little bit of writing skill and urged me at that point to go into reporting, because at the time it was the quickest way to really be able to utilize those skills. So if there's anything that I could recommend, it is really hone your writing skills. And I suspect everybody that's part of this panel has done that, and that's one of the reasons they're successful.
Thank you, Terry. And you just said something, Terry, that has also run through, I think this is event number 6 of the first 5, and now tonight, someone noticing something in you. But what that really is about establishing a relationship with, building a network of people who know you, who can support you and ultimately promote you. And so that sounds like you discovered someone in your time at UNH who served in that role for you. So that's wonderful to hear. Let's move on to our alums. And since you're Keene State alums, if there are specific relationships or experiences that you had, go ahead and name them, right? So that current students might be able to take advantage of that. Emma, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I had a hard time finding the unmute button there. I think that Terry makes a really good point, just kind of going off of that first about honing in on your writing skills, because a lot of people think, oh, well, you're on TV every day, all you have to be able to do is speak. Well, yeah, but you got to write what you're going to say. And that was a big emphasis that Dr. Nye always made while I was in the journalism program, is how important your writing is, and that, yeah, the video is important and your interviews are important, but how you write it is ultimately one of the most important, because people are hearing, you're hearing and seeing the story. And I always say this when I talk to anybody about the Keene State Journalism Department, and I kind of sound like I'm getting paid to say this, but everything that I learned, whether it was from Dr. Nye or Julio, any of the professors, it really, it prepared me for my career now. A lot of times I think college students sit in classes and they're like, I'm never going to use this again. This is pointless. They don't know what they're talking about. Chad Nye was on TV a long time ago, but I will say he does know what he's talking about. And so just everything that, the small pieces of how everything works. I mean, what I did in KSC TV, I do every day now. And so everything that was within the program really prepared me for the next step. And I think that was kind of the light went off when I interned at a TV station and I saw these people doing what I do now. And I was like, hey, I know what they're talking about. I learned that in class. And so I think that's really significant to just be telling students that what you're learning is valuable and you're not wasting your money. A lot of things that I did in college, like a good example is filing a right to know request. I just did my first one in my professional career 2 weeks ago. And the whole time I was thinking of Marianne, because she taught us how to file a right to know request. And I remember thinking this is such a pain in the butt, but when I went to go do it a couple weeks ago, I knew how to do it. So that, and just basically making a connection with whether it's your advisor or a staff member within the department. I still bug Chad all the time. We text and I ask him for his feedback on a lot of my work, because I found that some of the management that I've had between the last job and this job, they don't always take the time to give feedback. And so if you have somebody that maybe was your college advisor or professor that you really clicked with, I think that's important too, to have that relationship to continue to get feedback, because that's one of the greatest things about journalism, is that you can always be better.
Thanks, Emma. And as our most recent alum, was there anything outside? I know you're very active on campus. Was there anything in particular outside of your studies in journalism that also you find to have been very helpful to you today?
I think a lot of my public speaking came from some of my other experiences on campus. I was a part of orientation staff and I was a tour guide on campus for admissions. And so having those interactions with prospect students or students that have chosen to come to Keene and just to be well-spoken, give them the information that they need, I think helps a lot in what I do, because obviously I talk to people every day and I'm trying to learn their story. And so being able to gain those public speaking skills of just talking to people rather than talking into a camera, I think that those experiences were helpful.
Fantastic, thank you. Abe, how about for you? What are some of the experiences, academic and otherwise, that you find yourself drawing upon still today?
I think one of the most basic things you learn when you learn, like even just intro to news writing or something like that, is the idea of objectivity. And in my current job, I'm not really being paid to be objective anymore. Like, part of my job is to promote the athletic department. And if we're not doing well, and, you know, I don't want to make a big deal out of that. But objectivity has served me in other ways in terms of like interpersonal relationships and dealing with conflict and things like that, because you get like this innate training of how to empathize, for lack of a better term, with and find a common ground, see the other person's side of the story, understand better how they're feeling, whether you agree with it or not. And because part of my job is so front facing, even if people don't know who I am, my product is front facing, you often end up with a lot of complaints about that. And so to be able to listen to people and hear people out, even if you don't agree with them, or, you know, quite frankly, they could go take a long walk off a short dock. You know, it's a built-in skill that I still use to this day.
And Abe, what were some experiences at Keene State that you feel helped you as a student, that helped you develop some of those skills? Sure.
I used to write for the Equinox, and I had a column back in the day, and I could be critical, I suppose, of some of the coaching staff or the student athletes, and they would not always like that, and that they brought their concerns to me. I remember having discussions with them, discussions with coaches, and we sometimes didn't leave those meetings agreeing with each other any more than we did them when we sat down. But the relationship always improved, and there was always respect on both sides of the table.
Thanks, Abe. And how about you, Michael?
Yeah, I'd say I'd go back to you know, the courses, the working with Rose Condanis, who was a huge support for me. You know, even to this day, we still touch base. I was actually supposed to have dinner with her tonight if I had come out there and catch up on how things are going. So she was a great support system for me. She always held students to very high standards, which was something I remember very clearly. You know, at the time, you're kind of like, you know, you know, as a student, you don't realize how important it is until you get out to the real world and realize that those are the standards that, you know, professional institutions hold you to. So that's what it trains you for. But I'd say the biggest experience really was being executive editor of the Equinox for a year. That was something that was just prepared me immensely for everything, because you learn about every aspect of what goes into putting out a product, from the business side to photography to page design to, you know, making decisions about reporting and resources. That alone was invaluable, and prepared me for, you know, working with a team and trying to give positive feedback and be a sounding board for people. And those are skills that I still am working on. But, you know, that experience made me realize that I aspired to be in a position to be able to make important decisions and you know, have influence over the direction of the organization I'm working for. So that was really an inspiring and important year of my life, and kind of led me in the direction I ended up going into. But yeah, that's what I would go back to. But like I said, going back and being able to talk to students and touch base with professors has always been a good resource as well for me.
Thanks, Michael. So we've been looking in the rearview mirror a little bit. How about looking out the windshield now and look down the road and what's ahead? You know, we've anticipated asking the question of where you see your segment of the journalism industry headed in the future. A few of you, if not all of you, have alluded to the fact that the current health crisis is accelerating some things or disrupting some things in significant ways. But within the context of talking with students from Keene State College, who may be interested in a career in journalism, where do you see it headed, and what could they be doing in their time at Keene State College to prepare for that future? Terry, do you mind kicking us off with that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a journalist is a journalist these days, and Michael's a good example of that. Somebody that started out in print is now in broadcast, so I think that the skills that you learn, either in a journalism program or as a new reporter or something like that, it's very transferable to a lot of different things. And I don't know how newspapers are going to settle out in the end. I suspect they're going to continue to change fairly dramatically. We still hire when we have vacancies. Some newspapers do not, but we do. But what we're looking for these days are folks, one, that can write well, but two, have some really strong social media skills, are very comfortable in the digital arena. Two examples of folks that we worked with that have gone on to do some pretty amazing things. Elin Nilsson, who is now working at Vox. She was a terrific reporter, very skilled in social media and digital, and has kind of parlayed that into now covering Congress for Vox. Another gentleman, a guy named Jake LaHutte. He is with Business Insider now. He was a political reporter for us for a very brief time, but he kind of parlayed that experience into something. Now he's covering the primary at a national level. So both young people, very savvy and comfortable in the digital arena, recognized that they were multimedia journalists, not just print journalists, and have kind of leveraged those skills, and I think are great examples of how a journalist is a journalist. And it's really what you want to do with your arsenal of tools to help build a career. There's just so many directions you can go in, so I think there's still a very bright future for journalism, but it is changing dramatically. So my advice would be, be a good writer and just not be afraid of the tools that are out there to help help you communicate.
Great. Michael, how about you?
Could you, I guess, rephrase or repeat the theme we're talking about in terms of, is it basically advice to students? Steve?
Emma, how about you?
I'm sorry, could you,
Sorry.
just repeat the question?
You bet. I got sidetracked. I'm looking
That's
at the chat box. Sorry. Where do you see your segment of the journalism industry headed, and what would you recommend for students to build some resilience and be successful, maybe a couple decades out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just be, again, if you have a passion for journalism, pursue that, because you won't regret working in that field, no matter what industry you're in, what format you're taking. But prepare yourself to work in any format. I mean, it's pretty much just a big blend of everything now in terms of video and audio, print. We're all aspiring to the same goal, telling stories in different ways, different mediums. And, I was pursuing a very print-focused, path, but, had picked up some radio skills along the way, and that ended up proving immensely helpful. So make sure you prepare yourself to work in a variety of mediums. Radio, every industry has, uncertainty ahead. And for radio, we're transitioning to a more on-demand live stream audience. Radio listening is going down, live stream listening on smart speakers and apps and our website are going up, and that trend, I'm sure, will continue to go in their different directions. So we have to adapt to that and realize that traditional radio listening is not going to be there forever. I mean, I myself have just bought a smart speaker last year because I feel like I should know how to use it, and that's how we listen to the radio now. We had an old radio in the kitchen, didn't work that great, and now the smart speaker is crystal clear. So it's just about adapting and keeping up with technology and trying to be one step ahead of it and prepare for what's coming as best as you can. But again, I mean, if journalism is something that you think you want to do and feel good about, definitely lean into that. And I've never regretted the field I work in.
So, Michael, you said earlier you were editor of the Equinox in your time. Would you recommend, based on your story, that students interested in journalism spend some time with WKNE as well, and with Keene? I've forgotten the name, Emma, but the Keene State TV channel.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I think if you can come out of there with feeling like you've dipped your toes into each and got a basic understanding. I mean, you may spend more time with one or the other just because, you want to, dedicate yours to one. But if you can get an understanding of how radio and TV works and print works and come out of there feeling like, you have an understanding of the mediums, I think that cannot hurt because you want to keep your options open. And there's different ways of telling stories, TV, print, and radio, and all very effective and all important.
Thank you. I just want to take a quick break to remind students, faculty, and staff who are with us to use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions for our panelists, we'll transition to that in about 10 minutes. So please toss out anything that you'd like to know from tonight's panelists. Jamie, how about for you? What do you see in the future for magazine and other publications that you do, and what you'll be looking for successful employees in that space?
In the digital space right now, it seems like we put a real premium on being able to move super fast and also keep things super short. And that is really in direct conflict with how magazines have always been produced. They're meant to be, long form journalism. It's supposed to be more in depth, more thoughtful, better kind of composition and presentation. And there's a real question, I think, about whether print magazines will survive in the long term, but I don't think that the demand for really high quality, long form journalism is going to go away. And so we're actually looking for people who can do both. And it's pretty rare that we hire somebody, straight out of school or even 1 or 2 years out to write magazine features for us. But I really encourage students who have that as a goal to just get a hardcore writing background. I agree more with what Terry recommended. And I say, there's nothing like working for a daily newspaper to kind of get over whatever it is, whatever hump you have about writing, that you're just going to crank and you're going to get through that. And we have sourced, our senior editor right now, who really, essentially is a staff writer, came to us from a local newspaper in Peterborough. And so that path is possible. I hope I answered your question.
Oh, I think so, very much so, Jamie. Thank you. And Abe, how about you? As a fan of Keene State Owls, I've seen some changes myself in the past few years. What do you foresee in the future?
Generally speaking, I think this virus has kind of thrown us all into the unknown, and that probably goes for every industry. But with us, it's, all the remaining winter championships were just canceled. All the spring championships were canceled. And so we were, there's these rumors that fall sports might not happen. And kind of on a bigger picture, I do wonder how this virus will affect higher education, which is really the industry I'm in, as a whole. On a smaller level, we're Division III. We're not super well resourced compared to some Division III schools, or certainly the Division I's of any caliber. So we're kind of always constantly impacted by what Division I does, because with more resources and more staff members, you can put out more product. Our job is largely less about media relations now and more about content creation. And so whatever you might see a school with 10 or 12 people in its creative content department doing, we're trying to do with like me and 2 part-time people. So however you can make that work on a shoestring budget, I think that's only going to continue in kind of the theme of doing more with less.
And how about for social media, Abe? It seems as though you're doing a lot with social media as well. That almost, I think, goes to what Jamie just said about shorter form, more than the long form of the days, behind us.
Yeah, I mean, we have two or three big audiences. One is our fans, one is our current student athletes, and one is our recruits, the people that we want to come play, sports at Keene State College. And social media is the avenue where they're at, whether that's the kind of the three established platforms, which are Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or the new thing on the scene, which is like TikTok right now, which I'm supposed to be a young person. I don't even pretend to understand how that works. And who knows what the next big thing is going to be. But you try to stay as relevant as you can on all platforms. Don't overextend where you have 6 different accounts on 6 different platforms, but you're not paying attention to your Snapchat, that type of thing.
So Emma, I'm hearing an opportunity for you to mentor your former mentor and teach him TikTok. Did you hear that?
I'm only 2 years out and I couldn't tell you how to use it either. I have no interest, honestly. It is definitely all the trending videos right now. All of our trending news is TikTok. But yeah, no, I have no interest there.
All right, Abe, you're on your own. We had a question come in about a break that you had that's helped you to be where you are today, the successful journalist that you are. Can you tell us a little bit about that break and if there a particular person or circumstance in your life that helped facilitate that?
What do you mean by break, Steve?
That one? Oh, go ahead, anyone.
Yeah, what do you mean by break? Like, I just want to know what you're looking for.
Whoops, sorry, that did not help. I'm trying to, the light is fading and out where I'm looking up in the Alumni Center. So I'm getting a little orange, but that solution was not a solution. You were really hoping for something to happen, and something happened to facilitate that. So a person saying, "Hey, you should give this person a call," maybe, or anyone with an easy with a thought on that, and then we can all roll from there. Come on.
Sure, I'd say, being able to get into NHPR was probably a great just turn of events because, I loved my time at the Telegraph. I grew up in Nashua. I loved nothing more than, covering education there. And, but being able to transition to radio, I feel like has really opened up a different part of my career. And so being able to get in the door there, work as the newscast producer, work my way up and to a leadership role, as Terry probably can attest to, after the Telegraph was sold, I think there was just a lot of not great news in terms of the way things went down there. And so being able to move away and develop a whole new skill set in a new industry, while staying in journalism was really, looking back, I don't know where I would be at this point, but that was probably a good break in terms of just good timing to get in somewhere where I feel really strongly about the mission and the future.
Thanks. Anyone else want to help out with that one? All right. So in other Career Speaker Series events, this will be a final question, and then we'll go to see if there are any other questions from the audience. There's been talk about the importance of social networks, and and President Treadwell made a surprise appearance at the beginning of last week's, and last week's event was focused on internships. So when she popped in, I asked her, "Did you happen to have any internships?" And she talked about one person who said, "Hey, you really should go talk to this local company about doing an internship." And that led to her landing that internship, which landed to them hiring her upon graduation, and things just went from there. Anything more on that from you? Anyone want to chime in on that? Emma, thanks.
I think essentially, basically, the more internships, the more opportunities that you have, the better off you're going to be. The bigger network you're going to have as far as who you know. A big thing that I've kind of already learned being in the industry for just over a year and a half is that it seems really big, but it's really not. A lot of people know other people or have worked for people or have worked with people. And so where you are right now, I mean, where you want to go next might depend on some sort of connection. I mean, a lot of people say that it's all about who you know, and it's not all the time, but it is sometimes. And so I think getting those internships, getting those experiences, and then staying connected with those people from those internships, I think is also really significant. A big thing that I've done after I interned during the summer going into my senior year is I've stayed connected with a couple of those reporters at that station. It's a bigger market. And so those are other people that I turn to Chad for feedback, but I also turn to people that are in the industry and doing it because they've been in my shoes. And so they know what I need to do to get to that next level. So I think making connections, but also keeping your connections.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's great. It was great to hear earlier about you circling back to Dr. Nye on a regular basis. That's great. Anyone else have thoughts on that one? Importance of social connections and maybe even as you advance in your career.
Well, I can speak to a little bit. My whole career was launched by an internship at Foster's Daily Democrat. It was a full-time job. I had 3 towns to cover. It was a great structure. You really got thrown into the deep end. So I made a ton of mistakes, but made a ton of connections. Editors that I worked with there have been lifelong friends and have helped me along the way. Those initial connections that you have when you're young and you're just getting started out, so in some cases are your only connections. But they, if you do a good job, they're invaluable to you. They're folks that you stay in touch with. Rely, as Emma was saying, you rely upon and revisit many, many times. And so I'm not sure why that's the case. Maybe it's your first job or whatever, but I have just great memories of the journalists that I worked with and have marveled at the careers that they have built. I mean, I've ended up working for a couple of Pulitzer Prize winning folks, and those were kind of the salad days of newspapers, and I remember them well, and I remember the folks that I worked with.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, Jamie.
I would just say that, it's if you're just starting out and it's hard to connect with the people you want to reach with, like I get, 20 LinkedIn requests a day or whatever it is, you're just bombarded. I just think that the value of in-person networking is really high. And that seems like a no-brainer, but there are these sort of public events where you can interface with people. You can go to if you were settled on finding a job in a certain market, you can go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting. For a 21-year-old, believe me, you're going to stand out in that room because everyone else is my age. And they're going to want to meet you because you just showed some real enterprise doing that. Likewise, if you've settled on a career, you could go to a conference, a local conference, for that industry. Like I'm on the board of the New Hampshire Travel Council. Every year they have a industry gathering once a year. And a couple young people come and say, we're interested in working in the tourism industry, and they really meet a lot of people right away. So it's just looking for that opportunity to network in person with people that you haven't even met yet, something I would recommend.
Great wisdom. Thank you, Jamie. Anyone else? Mark, do we have anything in the Q&A? And I'm going to step away and try to work on my lighting here.
Well, there was one question about internships, but everybody, I think that we had some good coverage on that. However, they did want to know specifically around the Keene area, and I believe that's something that we're going to end on. There's some contact information from the panelists.
There is, but I'd love to open it up because I think it, like Jamie's comment, there may be other, the panelists may be aware of other vehicles or venues for internships outside of even their own organizations. But yes, the contact info will be put up at the end for their 5 organizations.
Does anybody want to jump in on that, or the other question?
Michael,
If you're looking for internship opportunities, we have them. We've got somebody from UNH working for us right now, but we've had Keene State student journalists work for us before. The importance there, I think, is to be able to work, a decent amount of hours during the week. It's hard to accommodate students that can only give a couple hours here or there. We need to be able to plan on a regular schedule. So if you've got a reasonably free semester and you want to structure something that involves, a reasonable work week, that's something we can talk to you about.
and Michael, I know we've had some Keene State students apply to NHPR for internships. What do yours look like? And when do they take place?
We have internships, I believe. I'm not sure what the status is this summer, but we have been able to provide pay for our interns the past couple of years, which is a big change, and I think help to diversify the pool of candidates that we're able to bring in. And but in terms of the interns we bring in, many of them go on to become larger roles at the station. I mean, it's a great place to start, and we have some fellowships that are funded by very generous donors. So there's a lot of different ways to get. This is my cat in the back here. A lot of ways to get your foot in the door in the station, and but we have internships for the summer. I can't speak right now. I don't have it in front of me in terms of the status of whether those have been posted yet or filled, or where they stand, again, because of the uncertainty where we are in terms of everything. But we have had good success with bringing in interns to the station that have gone on to other roles that are more permanent. We might bring them back for a different kind of fellowship or something like that. If they show a lot of drive and talent, we definitely do our best to try to hold on to those folks who seem to want to hang around and do some great work. So it's a great place to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, Emma.
I think something to note that I'm sure happens on a lot of college campuses, but obviously I know from my experience at Keene State that a lot of internships are on campus and you might not even know about them. And so definitely talking with your advisor and seeing the different opportunities that they have for you. I know, like, for example, when I did my internship with Abe and Chad for Inside Owl Athletics, that was a totally new position. I said to Chad, I was like, I need more experience. And he said, all right, let's talk to Abe and let's try to make this work so that you can have a new opportunity. And so things like that. I was a part of the Equinox, and I think that obviously I don't do newspaper, but being a part of the Equinox and seeing how the paper comes together, and kind of like Michael mentioned, page layout and editing stories and kind of being in charge of a staff, those are all essential skills too. So there's a lot of opportunities on campus as well as off campus too.
Thank you. Abe, go for it.
I was just thinking back to one quick anecdote was as I mentioned, I grew up in Nashua, and I recall my first, printed story was in the Telegraph. It was just a matter of just hounding the editor to just give me some sort of assignment. And I think my first assignment was covering a Corvette show at the Anheuser-Busch factory. And it was just so exciting to see my name in print. And I think my dad actually had it laminated, but that gave me something to show people, that this was published, and that's huge. And so I'm just thinking back to trying to be aggressive and just take what you can get and do the best you can with what you get. And that's just something that popped in my head right now.
Awesome. It's 7:11. We promised everyone to be done at 7:15. So if I could ask each of you, if you could share one gem of wisdom with the students who are obviously interested in a career in journalism because they're with us tonight, what would that be? Just hop in. Abe?
Just be curious about everything. There's a kind of innate desire to learn anything and everything, and I think that's really intrinsic to what makes a good reporter, a good journalist. You know, study things that interest you, study things that don't interest you. But that's the only way you're going to find out more about the world around you and the world that you're you know, there to report on, is to have that interest.
Thanks, Abe. Just hop in.
Well, I would say be very bold. You'll fail a few times, that's for sure, but on those, with those opportunities that you really do well with, you'll differentiate yourself among the staff. You'll be seen as someone that is interested, engaged, aggressive, whatever. And so don't be afraid to really stretch. This is not a field for folks that are meek, it's built for people that want to be out front, as Abe said, who are curious and want to bring information to people. And to be successful, you've got to be willing to extend yourself. So be courageous, and that will serve you well.
Anyone else?
I'll go next. If you want to be a journalist and you want to get into journalism, you're gonna want to love it, and you're going to want to be passionate about it, because I think this kind of piggybacks off of what Terry said. It's not easy, and it's hard to realize that you are going to fail, but you learn from those mistakes and become a better journalist. So if you're going to get into the field, be passionate about it, because it's not an easy one.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So,
Okay.
I would say, if journalism is something that interests you, pursue that. You know, stay true to your principles and adapt. You know, just try to, again, everything's just changing very quickly. Technology, the ways people consume information are changing, and just try to roll with that. And but at the same time, if as Terry said, if bringing information to people and informing the community is something that's important to you, pursue that, but be prepared to have to kind of adapt along the way and move along with technology and the way news is delivered. That's be my message.
Thank you.
And I'll just say, to sort of reinforce something I said earlier, is don't worry about your path through the journalism/media industry. You know, we joke with, you know, when you ask somebody who's a subscription marketer, how did they end up doing this? You know, no one left college thinking that's what they were going to do, but they came into the media field. This was something that needed doing. That turned out they were good at it, and they end up liking it. So just don't get hung up on being a Pulitzer Prize winner. That's all I'm saying.
Muted myself while I was coughing. Mark, would you please throw up the final screen with the contact info? And while you're doing that, I want to thank all of you, the panelists and students and faculty and staff who joined us tonight. Panelists, thanks so much for sharing your experience and your wisdom with us. And for everyone, you know, please again join us at 6 on Tuesday nights here. We'll be in community. I know that was an important part of why President Treadwell wanted to continue this Career Speaker Series. Is something we can all do together. Please continue to join us. And again, a reminder that next week's is focused on careers in biotech and medtech, and that is not what we have been promoting to this point. That's a quick change. So please join us again next Tuesday night at 6. It will run all the way through April 21st. Again, final thank you to the panelists, Grateful to have you, and for those that had signed on back in December, I know Daniel is very grateful for you continuing to commit to serving on this panel, even with a much less skilled facilitator than Daniel. So thank you all, and to all a good night.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone. Have a great night.
Have a good one.
And we'll leave that panelist contact info screen up for a few more minutes if you want to click on that or take a screenshot or write anything down. All right, Mark and Misty, it looks like everyone has left except for you and me. The three of us.
All right, if you want to stop recording.
Oh, yes, thank you.